So in this video, we're going to solve the linear inequality. We're going to graph the solution, and then we're going to write the answer in interval notation. Okay, so the first problem is 5z minus 7 is greater than or equal to 4 plus 7z. So the way this works, it's just like solving if there's an equal sign. We're solving linear equations, equal sign. Except if we divide or multiply by a negative number, then our inequality swaps around, okay? So let's try it out. Now, I see I've got a z over here and a z over here. Okay, one thing, it really does help if you move the smaller z, because if you do that, then you can avoid dividing by a negative at the end and having to remember to flip it around. Okay, so if you move the negative 5z, the opposite of plus 5z is minus 5z. So I'm going to do that to both sides. What do I get? I get negative 7 greater than or equal to 4 and then plus 2z. Okay, now to solve, I got to think, what's the opposite of plus 4? It's minus 4. So I'm going to do a minus 4 and a minus 4. If I do something on one side, what do I have to do? I've got to do the same thing to the other side, right? And so I get negative 11 greater than or equal to 2z. And then the last step, the opposite of multiplication, is division. But wait, do I change the sign? No, it's a positive 2. If you're dividing by a positive number, then you don't have to flip anything around. And so my answer is z is less than or equal to negative 11 over 2. Okay? Now, if we're going to graph this, I suggest that you write the variable first. Okay? To write the variable first means you put the variable first, and then you think, okay, which one is the bigger one? The alligator eats the bigger one, right? So the bigger one is negative 11 over 2. So the z is the smaller one. So this is negative 11 over 2. It's exactly the mirror image. Okay? So this is the same thing. This is just writing the variable first. I promise you it's going to help you out. All right? It's easier to read it this way. I read it as z is less than or equal to negative 11 over 2. It's easier to read from left to right than it is from right to left, okay? So now what I want to do is I want to graph it. Now to graph it, I need a number line. And on my number line, I need to have for sure one number, and that's this number right here, negative 11 over 2. Now, if you're not really comfortable about where that is, you can type it in the calculator, and you're going to get negative 5.5. Okay, so what do I need now? I need a number that's bigger and a number that's smaller. I don't care what that number is, but 0 is definitely bigger than a negative 5.5, and negative 10 is definitely smaller. Okay, so just pick one number on the left, one number on the right. I don't care which one you pick. Now, to graph it, what am I doing? I want z's that are less than or equal to. Okay, so since my variable is first, the inequality tells me which way to shade, right? These are all values that are less than or equal to negative 11 over 2. And I use the bracket here because I have the bar underneath. Okay, the bar underneath tells me that it's actually equal to. So that's the graph of it. Now, the interval notation, okay, where do we go from? Well, this is going forever and ever to the left, so that's negative infinity, up to, and where do we stop? We stop right here at negative 11 over 2, and we include it, so we put the bracket. So that's the interval notation, okay? So I know, maybe in high school you learn to make a circle and fill it in if you include it. I mean, that's good for high school, but now we are in college, and so we're using the bracket here, and really it helps us more so for the interval notation, so we already know what to put there. Okay, so it's really, this is probably the way it should have been taught all along, but, for better or worse, we were using dots and open dots and all that stuff. Okay? All right, so let's do another one. Here's an example. 7n minus 9.8 is less than negative 8.4 plus 6n. Okay. All right. So first thing I want to do is I want to move the n. Okay. I've got an n here and I've got an n here. So it looks like the smaller one is the 6n. So I'm going to subtract. Going to subtract 6n from both sides. And you know what? How about I move the bigger one, and then that way you get to see what it's like to have the negative going on. So I'm going to do that. So if you want to go that way, you can go that way and you'll still get the right answer. But I'm going to move the bigger one, and that way you get to see what it's like if you do end up with a negative. All right? So this is going to get me negative 9.8 less than negative 8.4, and then minus 7 from 6 gives me negative n. Okay, so now I'm going to add 8.4 to both sides. Okay, if I add 8.4 to both sides, what do I get? Well, I think that I get 1.4. Yeah, 1.4 negative is less than negative n. Okay. Now, I want to get n by itself, so I am going to do a division. I'm going to divide by negative 1, and I'm going to divide by a negative 1. Now, when I divide or multiply by a negative number, what happens? The inequality turns around. Okay, so the inequality changes. Negative and a negative make a positive 1.4. Negative and a negative make a positive n. Okay, so this becomes n is less than 1.4 for our answer right there. Now, I want to show you why this actually works the way that it does. Okay, so why does this work the way that it does? All right, so let me show you why this works the way that it does. Instead of dividing by negative 1, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add n. If I add n to both sides, what do I get? I get n minus 1.4 is less than, well, minus n plus n is 0. Okay, and if I add 1.4 to both sides, okay, I get n is less than 1.4. And do you see how this gets you the exact same answer? So this, my friends, is a verification of why we flip the inequality whenever I divide or multiply by a negative number. Okay, so just, that was just extra to show you that you can still get the same answer and avoid dividing by a negative or multiplying by a negative. Get rid of that negative n. Okay, so I want to graph it. So to graph it, I have a number line, and for sure I want to put 1.4 on the number line, okay, because that's the answer that I got right here. Now I want to put a number smaller, and I want to put a number bigger. Okay, that's a lot bigger, right? I don't care what it is, just make it smaller and bigger. And then I want n to be less than 1.4. So less than 1.4, all numbers smaller than 1.4 go in this way, and I do not include 1.4. So in interval notation, it's from negative infinity to 1.4, and then parentheses on both ends of that. Okay? Let's do one more. So I've got negative 3.8 x minus 5.2 greater than or equal to 6.8 times quantity 1 minus x. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to distribute. So I'm going to distribute and distribute. So this is 6.8 minus 6.8x. Okay. Now I have negatives on both sides. So negative x is on both sides. So I'm going to go ahead and move the bigger one here so that I can get rid of my negatives. Okay. The goal is, you try to make the coefficient in front of the x value positive. That way you don't have to worry about flipping around. But if you don't, that's okay. You just make sure to flip that alligator around, all right? So the inequality reverses. So look at that. That gets me, I guess, 3x minus 5.2 greater than or equal to 6.8. And if I add 5.2 to both sides, I get 3x is greater than or equal to, well, that's 0, carry the 1, that's 12. And if I divide by 3, I get x is greater than or equal to 4. Okay? So greater than or equal to 4, so I'm going to put a mark at 4, put a number below and a number above. And let's see here, shading. Which way am I shading? Looks like I'm shading to the right. Okay, only works if your variable is first, right? So if I shade to the right, shade looks like this, and I want you to do like a little wiggly wave like that, and then put an arrow that tells me it's going that way forever, and I put a bracket at the 4. And so this means bracket 4 to infinity, parentheses. Can't touch infinity, I don't put a bracket. All right, guys, so that kind of introduces you to linear inequalities. Now, the next video, we're going to talk about compound inequalities. So we're going to take more than one inequality, put it together, graph it, see what happens. All right, guys, see you then.